So I'd broken up with Gabby and I felt like shit and I was determined to make Seville a fresh start. And within weeks, I was worse than ever, really. And then I annoyed my flatmate and he was finding it difficult to live with me. And I was drinking in the like early every morning, 7 o'clock, bars.
On this episode, Gary joins me, who had a childhood many people think should protect someone from addiction. Supportive parents, private school, good friends, and every opportunity in front of him. But by his early 30s, he was waking up in hostels with no money, drinking at 7 a.m., at bars in Spain, and wondering how his life ended up here. And this is Gary's story on the Sober Motivation Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the show or watching along here on YouTube. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Now let's get to Gary's story. Welcome back to another episode of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Today we've got Gary with us. Gary, how are you?
Very well, thank you very much. Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Glad to connect. It was interesting, too, when I had asked you if you wanted to share on the podcast, you refreshed my memory of when I had shared your story like years ago.
Yeah, just over two. I'd only just started my page, Sober and Sound, and I'd messaged you with my little story and a before and after picture. And really, I have to be honest, it was your share that just kind of sparked my account. I remember I went to bed and I looked in the morning, I had like an extra 1,200 followers, and that gave me just a platform to like really build on. So respect, mate. Nice one. You've sorted me out.
No, that's great, man. And that's what it's all about. So what were things like for you growing up?
Oh, mate, I had a sweet childhood, really, to be honest. I grew up just south of Manchester in England, and yeah, like leafy suburbia, only child, got on great with my parents who were like normal and stable, and went to an all boys private school, was popular at school, was good at sport, never got bullied. I really, on paper, had the perfect childhood, to be honest, which was kind of, I think it made it more difficult for me when I started to drink, about guilt and shame, because, my childhood was sweet. I grew up in a kind of salubrious area where all the Man United footballers lived, and didn't want for anything like the perfect childhood on paper, really.
Yeah. Things in school went good. How do you get involved with all boys private school? Like, was that a popular thing, or is that a popular thing there?
Yeah, there's loads, really. It's quite common. There's one in every kind of major town, I would say. And it was just, if you could pass the 11 plus exam, I can't quite remember really, it's a long time ago now, but there was a specific entrance exam, and if you could pass that and your parents could afford it, you were good to go, really. And it wasn't like, yeah, people take the piss out of you because you're, you posh bastard. But it wasn't. It was nothing out of the ordinary, really. And I was reasonably academic. I wasn't great. I wasn't thick. And I kind of just breezed through. Do you know what? I breezed through school. I didn't push myself. I just went and had a laugh. And when I look back at school, I had a really good time, to be honest. So, yeah, it was kind of one of the standard things if you grew up in a reasonably well-off neighborhood.
Yeah. Which is so interesting, too, though, because you're painting this picture of, which I've heard so many times on the podcast, right, of a good childhood. Nothing that sort of stands out to say maybe later in life, oh, yeah, I mean, now it makes sense that I'm using alcohol or leaning into alcohol to cope with life or deal with stuff, right? Things are pretty good. When do you drink it? I have a lot of people on from the UK, too. Like, it seems like 13, 14. I don't know if that's your story, but in the park, with the friends, I don't know. Is that where we're
in the parks? Yeah, exactly the same. I was born in 1980, so I was a mid-90s teenager, and the country was pumping at that time. It had, the Britpop music explosion. My team, Man United, were winning everything. It was just up the road. Oasis were huge. And me and all my mates were mad Oasis fans. So we were all like trying to replicate them on a Friday night down at the park, drinking 2020, which is this kind of flavoured strawberry or kiwi liquor. I don't even know what it is really. And yeah, it was just like groups of teenagers just hanging around in parks getting pissed, but like battered, binge drinking to excess. You'd look around, there'd be like 5 teenagers all lying down in the grass, vomiting. And I think that was just the British culture back then. It really was. It was heavy. And I don't think in this country, certainly, that generation probably drank the most, I would say. So, yeah, nothing out of the ordinary. 13, 14, totally normal. totally normal. Even at like a private school, it wasn't like we were we were any different.
Yeah. What were your thoughts? Like, do you remember the first time you drank or no? Like, were you worried? Like, it seems like I'm only guessing here, but it seems like that could be sort of going against the grain for you, or was it just that normalized? Thank you as always for listening to the show. And I'm coming to you today with some exciting news that the Sober Motivation app is officially live in the Apple App Store. This is more than just a tracker. The vision and mission behind the Sober Motivation app is to build a community. It's not all about getting sober, but about staying sober. With hosting meetings, hundreds of meetings over the last 3 years virtually, and working with people trying to get and stay sober for 15 years, and my own recovery journey of 16 years, there's a few things that I know really matter and really make this work for people. And that's the quality of your relationships that you build with people that are on the same path. That's what this is all about. So download the app and start journaling, tracking your sober time, getting some motivational quotes. Also, you can attend our virtual meetings that we host 2 a day. Head over to sobermotivation.com, download the app, and I'll see you on the inside.
It was normalized really amongst all friendship groups. But I remember specifically I remember the first sensation of feeling tipsy ever in my life, only because it was the first night of the British National Lottery. It was the launch night. I think it was 1994, so I'd have been 13. And I just remembered I was given a can of lager on the sofa at home, and I drank it. And I remember when I finished it, I wanted another one. I can transport myself back to that moment easily. And I remember asking for another one, my parents saying no, and thinking, oh, fuck, I could easily have another one of them now. And then it became like on a Tuesday, knowing that we were going out on a Friday, I'd have it in my head thinking about it. And there was definitely some undiagnosed ADHD where I just couldn't switch it off, and I got obsessed with it really young, to be honest. You know, I was struggling come 16, 17. I knew I had something going on with it. Very young, really.
Walk me through that a little bit too. How does it look like at 16 that you're drinking more, or just looking for more opportunities to drink?
Do you know, it was kind of, I'd go to the pub to watch the football with my dad, and it might be midweek because they were playing in Europe a lot, my team. So we'd go every Wednesday night, and then there'd be Friday night and maybe Saturday night with my mates. So there was 3 guaranteed nights a week where I'd be able to drink. Because when I was 16, I looked 19. I was one of those kids. I was the first one to grow a beard and that. So, and then my parents were out at the weekends. I'd be looking for booze in the house, and I was always the first one to drink amongst my friends. As in, I'd be the one initiating it. Always initiating it. Like we'd do a house party, and in the morning there'd be beers around like half drunk warm beers on the kitchen counter, and I'd drink them. So it was like straight away. I had a few things happen to me when I was about 16. I had terrible acne on my back, which I saw dermatologists. I took all kinds of pills for, prescription pills, and actually stayed with me for about 20 years. And there was something there where I just wanted to like increase my confidence because it really affected me. And it was all systems go from 16, 17. I remember one night in the park, I said to my mate, I was like, I think I've got a problem with this. I can't stop thinking about it. And at any opportunity, I was all over it, really. So yeah, it was, that lasted until I stopped drinking, really. Yeah. I've got to be honest.
And did you see a lot of drinking growing up? I mean, it sounds like from what you shared there too, like this was pretty normalized, just in culture and maybe.
Yeah, in culture, I would say. Yeah, I don't think my mum doesn't drink much. My dad likes a drink, and he was just a normal dad. I played in a football team on a Sunday, and there was 4 or 5 dads that kind of looked after the club for 8 or 9 years, and we'd travel to Europe together. We'd go to Ireland on football tours, and all of those dads drank. And we'd run riot as teenagers, and, we weren't getting in trouble for drinking at 15, 16. They'd kind of roll their eyes. But that wasn't them being irresponsible, I don't think. It was just of its time, So we were kind of, it's not that we were encouraged to, but it was a laissez-faire attitude to seeing teenagers drink. Now, I think if my daughter was doing that, especially with my lifestyle that I had, I'd be all over it like a rash. but it just wasn't that way. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So yeah, it was totally normalized. I don't think my case was anything special compared to my friends and their families, but my insatiable appetite for it was very, very different. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that too. Even you mentioned at 17, like sharing with your buddy there that you might have a problem with it. I remember one of the worst hangovers I ever had. You just kind of sparked a memory for me. Is I went to a club, and I grew up in the US. You have to be 21 to drink. I was 18, I think, but you could go in and party, and then they would just put like an X, a Sharpie X on your hand. And then if they saw you
Right.
drinking, yeah, if they saw you drinking, they'd throw you out. So I couldn't buy any alcohol, but I just remember being so uncomfortable that I went around and like people went to the washroom or the bathroom and you couldn't bring a drink in there. So they had this little table there. And I just drank from all these random cups. I mean, pure insanity, right? Just
Yeah.
leftovers, and probably had like 20 different types of drinks, whatever, beer and liquor. And I woke up the next day after that, and my head, I thought for sure it was going to spin right off my shoulders. But now when I think about it too, it's like, yeah, even early on, it looked a lot different for me than it did a lot of my buddies. Like a lot of my buddies, we never talked about it obviously, but I don't think they were like overly worried about drinking all of the time and making it happen, or, setting the stage for that. But I
Yeah.
always was. I was like, when can we get back to that so I can really hit that sweet spot again? Because the first time I drank and got drunk, I was just over the moon, man. People liked me. Like girls were, I don't know if they were attracted to me or if they were talking to me. So I was like, hey, this is huge, right?
Yeah.
That really wasn't a thing before. I was so nervous and maybe just quiet and shy, and all of that changed. And I was like, man, this is beautiful. But it never really, when I look back on it, I never really got back to that experience again. And maybe I was kind of on the hunt for,
Mhm.
that level of acceptance. Where do things go for you from there? I mean, you're not really experiencing any consequences early on and stuff like that. Doesn't sound like anyway.
Not really. No, I would say probably 17, 18 when we got to the older part, the end part of school, I'd start to be pretty mental at the weekends. Monday morning at school, be like, oh, did you hear what Gary did? Oh, did you see what Gary did? Did you see that thing that Gary smashed up? So it slowly started to become apparent to everyone that when I was pissed, I was a nutcase. And I think that was my thing. I was destructive, as in physically destructive of lampposts. I'd kick anything that moved. And there was obviously like this deep frustration within me that I couldn't identify. And when I got drunk, it came out, and it came out my mouth as well. I'd say things to people. So I'd wake up on a Monday having to go to school and be like, oh no, what did I say to her on Saturday night? And that just, I was legendary for that. And it was the same at uni. It was the same when I moved to London when I graduated and lived there with friends. And, I was just volatile. So there was clearly something in me that, well, it didn't agree with me at all, really. So it became the problem and the solution. It was the solution to the anxiety, the feelings of unease, the ADHD that I didn't know I had. And, it was just this cycle of absolute madness. And when I moved to London in my 20s, I was in a band and I was trying to play up to that kind of lead singer rock star. And yeah, it was just carnage the whole way through, really. So even at 17, 18, I was getting earmarked as someone that when he's drunk, he's off his head.
Yeah. And that was every time, or
More or
like,
less.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
every time,
yeah.
just pedal to the metal.
Yeah, totally.
When did the other stuff kind of come up for you, right? Because you share about, your childhood, really being a great experience for you. Like, when do you feel like, maybe the anxiety kind of crept in, like, maybe the ADHD sort of affecting you, like what I'm most curious about, I guess, is what were the boxes that alcohol was checking for you with what was going on? Why continue at that point in your life? If you can remember, I know it wasn't yesterday or anything,
Yeah.
but
I think I don't know. To be honest, when I look back at my late teens, which is definitely when it became a serious issue, I feel out of place at school. I never, because it was quite a posh school, and I was in the rugby team for a long time, and the rugby team, and I never liked rugby. I just wanted to go on a rugby trip to Canada. So I played with all the rugby team who were kind of more stiff upper lip, the classic British, more posh end of the scale. And I rejected that. I was not into that at all. And I, my group of mates I was popular with everybody, fairly enough, but I just didn't identify with that kind of uber posh British sensibility. And I think there was something in me that rejected that and wanted to be, what's the word? Rebellious. I really don't know. It's complex. There's a few other things that happened to me. There was a girl that claimed that I'd got her pregnant, and I found out in my late 20s that wasn't true. But at that time, I was really stressing about it. I didn't confide in my parents about it. I only told one mate. I was trying to do my A levels, which are like the last exams you do before you leave school and go to university. And I just feel like the 2 or 3 life events at sort of 16, 17, there was an implosion there with me. And alcohol was the only solution. It really was. And I was shy. I relate to what you're saying. I was shy around girls. But when I'd had a drink in me, I was charismatic, gregarious, funny to a point. And then I was a wanker. But, so maybe it was that. Because I also found when I moved to London, I'd graduated from uni, and because all I did at uni was just drink and take drugs, really. I didn't study very hard, and I didn't have a vision for my career or anything like that. And I remember waking up in London one day, I must have been about 25, 26, thinking, oh, shit, I don't know how to be a man. I've got no idea how to do this. I can't face it, so I'm just going to get pissed again. So, yeah, it was it was miserable. Awful.
Yeah. Anybody around you notice, like during university or anything too? Anybody mention like, hey, the drinking Gary, or no?
Again, we were all doing anything that was put in front of us. My group of friends at university, recreational drugs, ecstasy particularly, it was so common. And we lived in a place where drum and bass was massive. So those nights were a lot of ecstasy. And I just ended up being friends with everyone that got pissed a lot and took drugs. But I do think like my closer friends would, we'd go out on a Friday or a Monday or whatever, and they'd all be, oh, I'm never drinking again. That's it. I can't do this. Oh, that's the worst hangover of my life. And I'd be like, who's coming to the pub with me? And it was kind of one of those unsaid things that, yeah, he just drinks. He's got no stop. He'll drink on a Monday morning if it's socially acceptable. He'll drink the morning after a session if there's beers in the fridge. He'll drink Sunday night when everyone else is like dying on the sofa. And my best mate, who's still my best mate, I mean, a few times I'd had big crying fits after being kicked out of clubs. He's like, bro, you need to slow down on the drink. But 22 years old, Yeah. Okay, tomorrow I'll try. But even at that age, I was getting into this cycle of I've got to stop. I'm so destructive. I was getting kicked out of the university union. I wasn't allowed into the building for 4 months for fighting. I was getting kicked off my course. It was just, everything was a disaster, really. So, but yeah, it's not like people put your arm around you and went, it'll be all right, mate. Why don't you go to AA? Nothing like that. Nothing.
Yeah. It is so interesting, though, because a lot of people bring up those conversations that like maybe long before they quit, when maybe the red flags are present, people around them, they mention just that. You got to cut back. You got to slow down. And I think hindsight's 20/20, right? And everybody goes on their journey, so it's like not to be hard on ourselves, but I think that truly I look back on my life and, everybody told me that. Not many people told me I had to quit. But they said, you got to slow down. Yeah, you reel it in. Why don't you have less? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And like to them, all of that stuff made sense. They were able to do it. For me, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about there. Like you guys leave drinks behind. But I think was maybe sort of the lack of understanding of how all of this is. If I could have cut back or slowed down or stayed within the lines, I much rather would have done that. Like I would have done that on autopilot. So when I look back now, like I wanted to do that, but I just couldn't a majority of the time. Now, there were times where, like, every time I drank, it wasn't a disaster. A lot of the times it was okay. Like, maybe wasn't great, but, I wasn't getting in huge trouble. I didn't feel good about it. But it was the times where it was, things went too far, it got trouble or got arrested or it flew too close to the sun. Is that what they say?
Yeah, yeah. And also back then, there was less evidence and there was less, recording of said behavior. And I wonder if that's why the younger generation drink less than we did. I don't know, no idea. But I think if, I went through Facebook about 5 years ago and I just deleted loads of photos of me looking like an absolute wreck, apart from a few that I kept. And, the cataloguing of that, if it'd been on social media all the time, may have impacted me differently. But, it was, well, you can only live your time, can't you?
Yeah, 100%.
What can you do?
Yeah. And I feel like there's different stages too that we go through of, how this kind of plays out and sort of in those early days, like, hey, I know there's a problem, but it's like that quote that, it's like, why do you always take the hard road? And then the person responds back, why do you assume that I see two roads?
I like that. That's good.
Maybe that's all we know. This is what works. And it's not as obvious as when we look back, like, man, that should have been so obvious. Why didn't I see it? But at the time you just don't. I didn't anyway. I just really didn't see that not drinking was even really an option.
No, I didn't either.
Because I was going to figure it out. Like I'll get it. This is just a rough patch or whatever. And then I would get a little bit confused, I think, because I would have some rough nights. Things would be disastrous, but maybe the next weekend or the next 3 times things were okay. And I was like, yeah, see, like I'm going to be all right. Like I'll just drink like that. But it would always catch back up with me to the, the disaster again. But it was a little bit confusing and then I could reel it in and it was all right. So, I mean, where do you go from there? I mean, you graduate school. That's big. I mean, do you jump into like working or you move too, right?
Yeah, I went to university in the north of England and I went home, I packed a bag and I moved to London straight away, almost within 2 or 3 days without a job. I had a girlfriend and we moved in with her mum and dad for a little while. And and then I got my first job. Her and I broke up and it just gave me this freedom. I was living in London. I was working full time. I didn't know my ass from my elbow. I had no maturity whatsoever, but I had enough money to pay rent. I had enough money to get pissed at the weekend. And then I didn't. And then I started getting payday loans. And then I started not going to work on Mondays and Tuesdays. And then that became my life, really. Just living in London, it's quite common that you go and you live in a house share, like with strangers, rock up, look at the room, like it, give the guy a deposit, get your keys. Good, it's not like it is now. And I just was in that cycle in London for years, really, of underachieving. But when I first got there, her and I broke up, I just felt this, freedom. I can just get smashed. That was honestly what I thought. It's like, I can just get pissed as much as I like, even though I hated it and I was conflicted. So it was until I moved to Spain when I was 31. It was 8 years of drunken, underachieving debauchery that just made me miserable. And that was, from 23 to 31 years old. That's all I did. I sang in a band and I took drugs and I got pissed. And I hated myself most of the time. When I was sober, I hated myself. So I had to get drunk to turn off the noise. And that was my 20s, really, relentlessly so. It's awful.
Yeah. What was it? What were the routines like for you? Did you go out at the pubs? You're playing music too. I mean, that's a big thing. Did you drink at home at that point or by yourself or no?
At uni, I drank in the house alone or with people. I would drink in the house on a Monday. No one else would. People would start drinking on a Thursday. I was drinking every day in the house then. And in London, I drank in the house every night at home. And there'd be spells in, moving around London, different areas. I'd move to a place and there'd be a really good pub on the corner. That would become my local. And I'd end up, get off the train. My thing, this was my drinking routine. I'd go to work, if I made it to work. and I'd drink on the train. I'd walk out of work, I'd get a can or two cans of beer for the train back to where I lived in London. I'd get off the train, I'd sometimes get another can, so because the pub was 12-minute walk away. And then I'd
Yeah.
go to the pub and I'd sit in the pub with 50-year-old men until 10 o'clock at night. And then I'd go home and drink until I passed out. It's kind of how I lived
Mm.
if I had money. And when I didn't have money, I was climbing the walls. So then I'd get all these, I don't know if you have them in the States, payday loans, like
Mhm.
advances, and the interest rates are insane. And
Yeah.
the bailiffs that come to your house are very intimidating, and the letters are horrible. And then the fees escalate. So that like the financial weight on my shoulders was crippling. And it just led me to drink more and get more loans. So yeah, I drank all the time, really. When I think
Yeah.
about it, from like leaving school, as in school, leaving, high school, 18, until 33, when I got sober, I drank. If I had money and I didn't have a commitment, I was either drinking or trying to drink every minute of the day, really,
Yeah.
I would say. It's
What's
pretty
that
sad.
like when you're going through it? When you're drinking every day, or your whole routine there too of going to the pubs? Like, how do you? I think you shared a little bit of it too earlier. Like, how do you feel about yourself? I mean, or are you sober long enough to really have a look at where this is headed?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if I transport myself back to like a particular pub that I drank in when I was 25, 6, I'd sit in the pub and be beyond miserable and stressed daily, really. So, and I think my main concern, I think at that time was the financial stress because I didn't want to reveal anything to my parents. I was just that type of person. I didn't like to burden them. And then you get into the borrowing money from mates and not being able to pay it back. And just the self-disgust at myself. In the hours I was sober enough to think about my life, I was miserable the whole time. And now I do coaching, and I learn about the science of alcohol, and I was in a highly elevated state of stress at all times. Really, my
Mhm.
nervous system was wrecked, cortisol through the roof, and I just would wake up every morning and the anxiety, like, we all know what it's like, the anxiety. But yeah, like almost every day for a decade, I would say, I just woke up and I had a feeling in the pit of my stomach. It was like, oh my God, really? Is this what it's become? Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, just a shit, depressing way to live.
Yeah, it's like
Awful.
that sheer panic every
Yeah, yeah.
morning. Waking up, it's that sheer panic of, yeah, and then maybe committing to ourselves, like, yeah, I'm not going to drink today. Some people,
Correct.
kind of go through that. I mean, I know I did. Some people share 100 times of like, yeah, of course I'm going to do something different. You bring up a good point there too. I mean, that's in the simplest form of understanding things, because I think it's easy to really get into the trap to beat ourselves up, right? And the shame and the guilt can shoot through the roof, and we wonder why we're doing this. We know better. Like, this is not helping us achieve our goals. But when it's sort of the only tool on our belt that our brain is used to, and every time we're increased stress, or the financial stuff, or everything else that's going on, or we just feed it alcohol, well, the brain, in the simplest of forms, I think the brain is just saying, hey, that's what we've always done. Let's just
Quite.
do that again. And the cycle just repeats. In the hamster wheel, we just keep going until we're kind of willing to try something else out. But making that jump is scary and unknown. And as humans, we like to stay comfortable, even if it's destructive. We'll
Yeah.
remain in the pattern and kind of keep things going. So how
Yeah.
do you mentioned too, like you moved to Spain. Do you have any relationships too in this sort of stretch of 8 years in London?
Yeah.
Like, is that a part of it or no?
Yeah. Yeah. I had, I would say, a normal number, two or three in those 8 years that were always with people that like to drink because I couldn't be with anyone that didn't drink because it was
Yeah.
so common for me to have a drink in my hand. It had to be with a girl that was a party girl. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like they all ended in, tears. The one that I really cherished ended because I was just unreliable, not abusive. I've never been abusive, but it's just volatile, too unpredictable to be around, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then I met someone when I was 31 and we fell in love and we moved to Spain together. And I thought moving to Spain would be a fresh start. But I didn't realize, you know, obviously when I look back, it's ridiculous, but I took my alcohol dependency to Spain with me. You know, like, if you don't confront it,
Yeah.
and then you get Spain and the booze is cheaper. I had a great job, managed to get a teaching job at a university that I loved, and you know, I enjoyed that time. It was a really like freeing time to get away from London and, you know, like run away from some of the financial problems. But I was still Gary, you know, let's just say the generic word, still Gary the alcoholic, you know. And then all that came to a head, and I separated with my partner. And I just, yeah, that was it, really. I just went on a destructive mission for about 9 months. I changed city. I moved to Seville. And at that time, I was like, I'm 33. Like, when is it gonna give? You know, my friends are all having kids, and I'm, you know, lying in a pool of my own piss again. And there was one particular weekend I went away to a city called Granada, a very beautiful historical city. Loads of MDMA, loads of drinking, annoyed all my friends. The few I had left, and that was it. It was like my light bulb moment, and yeah, it was coming. It was too late, but at least it came, you know. And when I look back, 33, I'm 46 now. I'm 46 soon. 33 is young to get sober, so I'm very grateful. But yeah, it was a bit of a you know, cataclysmic blowout, I would say, at the end.
Yeah.
And I needed something like that.
Like what was it? You moved to this other town and then did something happen, or is this a buildup of just everything since you started?
So I split up with my partner in Valencia in the August the previous year because of my drinking, and I loved her to death, and I hated myself for the way I'd behaved. And then all my colleagues at work were sick of me. So in the January, I moved to Seville. I don't know if you've ever been to Spain. Seville is breathtakingly beautiful. It's also one of the hottest cities in Europe. So I was like, right, fresh start. Moved with a friend from Valencia. We moved in together. English guy, younger than me, cool guy, another teacher. That was January, and we weren't starting work until May because of our work contract. We worked our arses off for about 8 months, and then we had 4 months, you know, holiday effectively. Right. There's more bars in Seville per square kilometre than any other city in Europe. And I'm living in the like historical old town. So I mean, I was in a bar every morning at 7 a.m. And then I just went to Granada for the weekend to see a mate, and my flatmate came with me, and I behaved like a knobhead on the Friday night. And then I don't really know what happened. I took a lot of MDMA on the Friday night, and then I woke up in a hostel that wasn't the one I moved in, that we arrived at on the Saturday afternoon, and I was like, what the fuck am I like? It just felt different. I had no money. I got drunk on the Sunday with my other mate from Valencia. I woke up in his flat because he'd moved to Granada. I got pissed on the Sunday and the Monday with him. And I woke up in his flat on the Monday morning, actually. Sorry. Woke up on the Monday morning in his flat, and I took 2 cans out of his fridge and I tried to find my hostel. I've told this story a lot on social media. And I had no money, no phone battery. My flip-flops snapped, and I was walking through like this horrible terrain. And I just knew that day. I was like, wow, right, something has to give. I waited in the centre of the city for my flatmate on the off chance that he'd walk past, because I was like, well, this is the most central part of town. And I was stood there for about 2.5 hours on my own, just like questioning my life. And then he walked past with a couple of people, and he gave me $50, basically told me to go fuck off nicely. But he was fuming. And I took 2 cans onto that train, and I drank 1.5 of them. I got to Seville. I walked into my apartment in Seville, and I was like, right, I'm never drinking again. And I poured the last half of the second can down the fridge. I've not had a drink since.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty mental, really. I woke up on the Tuesday, I rang AA from a cafe, and they didn't have any. I just missed a meeting. There was a guy from Florida, actually, an English speaking AA. And then I just spent the next 4 days like withdrawing on my sofa. I should have gone to hospital, really, or detox or something, but I had 4 horrific days. And I went to AA on a Saturday. Slowly but surely kind of pieced my life together from there.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it was kind of a cool story. Now I look back on it. It's like a very good story for Instagram. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you didn't plan for it to be that way, right? It's fun.
No, not at all.
It's wild how that works out. I mean, looking back at everything up until this moment, Gary, growing up, great childhood, private school, going to university, and then things take a turn. Did you ever think to yourself, how did I possibly end up here? Because I know I had those thoughts too of all the opportunity I had and how I could have, potentially I didn't. And I don't beat myself up for this, but how I potentially could have made a different turn and maybe things turned out differently. Although I am grateful how they turned out. But did it surprise you with how you grew up to where you were at, say, 33 years old?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. Because I looked at a lot, my peers from that school and my background and my university as well, and they'd all made a relative success of their lives. They'd all been become financially stable. They'd all had children, more or less. And not all of them, but I did feel, do you know what? I mean, I think that was my torment. I knew how much, I've said this before, I knew how much potential I had and what I could give. And I knew I was well liked, people cared about me. I was popular. I'm an empath, all of the above. But I think the torture was knowing I had loads of potential and doing fuck all with it was one of the turmoils that I got stuck in, which led me to drink more because I just couldn't handle my headspace. So what? So yes, the answer to your question is yes. It was almost, that was the torture, really. Like, how has it become like this? If I'd have grown up in a city and in inner city poverty, and all my peers were the same, I might not have thought about it as much. But watching your friends grow and succeed, and I'm talking like, I've got one mate who ran in the general election at 28. Like, he's on TV as an economist getting interviewed on the BBC on a Tuesday morning, and I'm like drinking a can of Stella while I'm watching it. I'm like, dude, where did it all go wrong? And I honestly think when I look back now, a lot of it had something to do with having ADHD. I'm convinced of it. And people I coach, I'd say 60-70% are diagnosed with ADHD. And we talked about that before we started recording. I just didn't know how to get out of the cycle, and I didn't know how to break that craving loop. I didn't know how to get on top of it. I was just felt powerless,
Yeah. Was there any earlier intervention, or did anybody pick up on ADHD sort of symptoms when you were growing up?
No, definitely not. Not at all. In fact, I would only say about 4 years ago, my partner in the car said to me, I was stimming in the car, looking out the window. I was going, hibbity, hibbity, hib, hibbity, hibbity. It's like, babe, you've got ADHD. I was like, don't be daft. And then I looked into it and thought, oh my God, this explains my whole life. That period where ADHD became like a buzzword and everyone was like, oh, I've got ADHD. Yeah. I mean, I did hours of research, rejection sensitivity and all of that. I was like, oh my God. And you know what? It was very freeing, because it almost felt like I wasn't just a character flaw. I wasn't a weak piece of shit that couldn't get a grip on his life. There was something going on. So that was, I found, a lot of people struggle when they discover they have ADHD, but I found it was an explanation to my past, I would say. So yeah, I was kind of relieved. But no, I don't think it was, I mean, I look back now, it's fucking obvious, but
yeah. Well, the self-medication element of it too.
Oh, like 100%. Yeah.
The drinking to slow everything down and becomes the thing. I mean, I relate to that 102%. My life went off the rails. I was growing up taking Adderall, Ritalin, ton of interventions. In when I was 17, I stopped taking it on my own. I was just sneaking. My parents thought I was still taking it. I stopped taking it. I was like selling it at school. Craziness. My life went to shit within a matter of weeks.
Really?
And it wasn't about, I think like, and I could be wrong here. I haven't talked to everybody in the world, but I think a big part of the ADHD people think about is like, at the time it was like fidgety boys, right? Like boys
Yeah.
that don't sit still. But over the years, I've learned that there's so much more like that. When you're an adult, that's not necessarily going to be a problem. But like when you're
Yeah.
fidgety and you're in high school and it's kind of against the grain, it's not really what they're used to, that can create problems. But as you get older, 40 years old, if you're fidgety, it doesn't really matter. Like there's no consequences necessarily for
Yeah.
that. But it's the other things, like you mentioned, the rejection sensitivity, and how these relationships in your life, right? Like all of them are ending, and it's some of them. It sounds like it's rough, but like that can have a big impact. And I think of how we feel about ourselves, right? You mentioned too, you're harnessing all of this potential, but you're not exploring it. You're not like pushing it into the world. And that's relatable for me too. And then you just feel like, wow, you know what? Like this isn't good. Right. And then it's like, all right, let's quiet it down. You also mentioned the other thing too, which I bring up, I feel like in a ton of shows, is wherever you go, there you are. It's like we want to change up where we are, right? Like kind of change our location in hopes that will change our life. And then, maybe slowly, maybe a couple days in, it's like our old version or whatever shows up on the next plane. So interesting. The first time I went to rehab, when I was 17, I thought I was doing so well. Like it was like a 12-month program my parents had forced me to go to. Well, I didn't have a choice. And I thought I was doing so well, right? I'm putting on this show. I'm 4 months in, right? I'm like really changing. And we used to have these focuses where the, treatment team comes up with like your focus for the week. And I remember at 4 months, I got this one: wherever you go, there you are. Like, you're not fooling us. It was something like that. And they just came right at me with that one. And I was like, I thought I was doing so well, I guess I wasn't to them, but it always reminded me of that. So you make this big change, man. I mean, you're like, I'm going in, I'm making a call to AA. You talk with a guy in Florida. How do things work out from there? Like, did you think like this is it?
Do you know what? I went to AA on the Saturday and I was comfortable. It was an English speaking AA. My Spanish wasn't great at that time. I went in, it was full of people from Scotland. And I was actually born in Scotland. My parents were Scottish. So I was like, there was a woman from the town I was born in. And I shared, and I went outside after, and I sat on the steps, and I cried uncontrollably for about 3 or 4 minutes. And I was like, oof. And for the first time in my life, I felt like it wasn't catharsis. It was like, it was just like a cold glass of water in my face. Like, right, this is it. You have to. There is one option here, and that is to go all in and make getting sober your life's priority. And I felt that very powerfully. And I had 5 weeks before I was going back to work, which in some ways was good because it allowed me to take stock and think about things. In some ways it was bad because I had 5 weeks of like, twiddling my thumbs, easy to drink. But I don't know, something felt inside me that, seismic. And I just did it a day, to cliche, but I did it a day at a time. And it was, honest to God, I always tell people I feel like I had my head in an astronaut's helmet and everything was in a bubble for about 3 or 4 months. My life didn't feel normal. I didn't feel normal. But I remember I'd go and sit in a cafe after work on the outskirts of town, and I'd make notes, and I'd read the big book, and I just felt something in me that this was it. I don't know, and I knew it was going to be hard, and it's the single hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It took me 2 or 3 years to totally restructure my life. But yeah, I just felt through my core that I had to give it my all. And I think what I realised was, before I wanted to lose weight, I wanted to get a better job, I wanted to, maintain a healthy relationship with a girl, but I wanted to do all them while I was drinking. And then I realised if I didn't drink, I think I realised quite quickly that all of those things could potentially happen and fall into place. So I realised that getting sober was like number one. And I literally dedicated 2 years of my life to not drinking, to be honest. I think that's why people like my advice now because I'm very honest. So yeah, it was different that time. I don't know. Something, the stars aligned for me, I think.
Yeah. Which is interesting in so many ways too. I feel like the old idea, and I mean, it still rings true for some people, but is this idea of like a rock bottom event happening. You know, it's like the rock bottom happens and the next day, you know, people just, yeah, I'm sober now. I'm going after it. Like that's motivated me and inspired me. I don't really hear that story that often. I'm sure it's out there. I hear sort of, I think this story more, the rock bottom idea being internally, like maybe at the soul level, like the soul is crushed of emotionally exhausted, drained, like you want to pursue stuff. But what you said, I think rings so true for so many of us. We want to figure out X, Y, and Z while drinking. But then I feel like whether we realize it or not, we go through these different scenarios and it's like, okay, this didn't work out again, but it wasn't the drinking. Oh, this didn't work out again, but it wasn't because of drinking. Like it's not a big deal. But then maybe we wake up to the fact that, hey, drinking is getting in the way. It seems to be the one thing that is consistently being part of our life. And, you know, maybe we see that. It's just such an interesting thing because I feel like, I mean, whether people are waiting for something to happen or they're like something hasn't happened yet that we see in the Hollywood movies. Well, there's, you know, how am I going to qualify for sobriety or change it? And I'm just like, nothing really out of the ordinary has to happen. I think it's been happening for years for most of us.
Yeah, I agree. Like the rock bottom ones, it's a dicey concept because there's always another level that you can stoop to, or you could acquire, you know, liver problems, or you could get kicked out of your house, and then you could live in your car, but then you could get the shit kicked out of you while you're sleeping in your car. Then you're under a brick. It's like, where does it end? You know, like what is rock bottom? So I think you're right. It's that kind of, I bottomed out emotionally. I couldn't do it anymore. And I think I realized it would just become so overbearing. I was like, all right, it's get sober or just be like this forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you want? You know, dickhead, sort it out, you know. Take control of your goddamn life for once.
Yeah.
And what I did quite quickly and quite well, I think, was I lost a pity party. I didn't entertain any victimhood. I blamed myself. Okay, it's not ideal, but you know what I mean? I found the non-negotiables that worked for me every day, which happened to be meditating in the morning, gratitude, long walk before work, saying no to every single social engagement, and like delving into YouTube for philosophy content and, you know, growth content about how to, you know, a comeback story, Alan Watts, philosophy, you know, Buddhism and all that kind of stuff. And that I just got up, did those things in the morning, went to work, and I liked my job and I was good at it, which gave me purpose. And then I came home, people said, "Are you coming out for a coffee?" No. "I've got a drink problem and I'm trying to conquer it." "Are you coming out for a cup? Are you coming out for a drink?" "No, I'm getting sober." "Hello, nice to meet you. I'm getting sober." "Hello, what's your name?" "I'm Gary. I'm 5 weeks sober." You know, it was like that all over the place.
Yeah.
"Oh, come out on a Friday night." "No, it'll kill me. I'm going home." And I went home every night for like 2 years. So I just found my 5 non-negotiables, and then suddenly I liked myself and I'd lost 30 pounds and my performance at work was improving and I was sleeping better and I could look at myself in the mirror and I hadn't felt disgust. And then I got offered the coordinator's job at work. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, empirical evidence that repetitive, consistent, quote unquote, boring behaviors are going to change my entire life. And that's how you got to do it, I think. I mean, you can maybe go to AA forever and go to meetings 3 times a week and call yourself an alcoholic. But I left AA after 10 weeks because I was like, I've got to call myself an alcoholic forever. That sounds fucking mental. I didn't get it. And I still don't get it. And I'm not saying that they didn't contribute to my life massively. Those 10 weeks were massive for me. But I just didn't understand what that was all about. I was like, nah, man, because I don't know about you, but I'm inherently a very optimistic, positive person. Even when I was drinking, I was like, something will give.
Yeah.
And it never did. But anyway, and I just thought, right, I'm just going to do this same shit over and over again until I redefine myself. And then the desire to create a new identity didn't just become a desire, it just happened. You know, he's Gary, he's oh yeah, look at him, he doesn't drink. I was like, oh, I love this. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, great job, man. And that's another thing you mentioned there too, right? I feel like this could ring true and maybe something in line with something maybe you thought, maybe not. But I think that it doesn't work out for us so many times so that maybe we convince ourselves consciously or subconsciously that to get out of this cycle must be so difficult because we've tried 100 times and didn't work. But the truth is, it's actually really simple. It's not
Yeah.
overly complicated. It all starts with not drinking. While we're drinking, I think it's really difficult to make progress. Not that we can't, but it's like when you quit drinking, that opens up the opportunity to make progress because we've been avoiding how we're feeling. We're not sleeping great. You mentioned too, like that's one thing improved. Our relationships, what we're doing with our free time. Drinking just consumes so much time. A lot of people are like, I get back 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, maybe 8 hours a day. If you drank 4 hours the night before and you're feeling hungover for the first 4 hours the next day, well, you got 8 hours back in your life, right? Which that can be a struggle too. But when we're drinking all the time, it's really hard to like accomplish stuff. And now there's some people that are outliers and they'll message me or whatever, and they'll make comments on Instagram. They're drinking all of this and they're, gazillionaires and they have 3 private jets and like, that's cool. Those stories are out there, but that's not the majority of people's story. The majority of people, I think that it just takes and takes and takes. And when you put it down, you walk away, you get sober. There's so much more time, in our day to do all these other things.
Yeah. And you make a good point about when you're drinking, you don't think you can do it, or it's very difficult, but that's because your brain is your own worst enemy at that time, but also your brain's not functioning properly. So everything seems harder. You can't make good decisions. You can't feel joy from small things. So there's like no good coming in, and your brain's not able to like compute anything, holistic or wholesome at that time. And then just, I say to people when I'm coaching, you just need a prolonged period of sobriety long enough to realize how good it can get. And, because everyone talks about early sobriety, emotional sobriety. Early sobriety is like finding your willpower to turn that into discipline, finding your bravery, finding your coping mechanisms, galvanizing yourself, ready to go. And then, emotional sobriety, oh yeah, you got to unpack a lot of shit maybe from your past. But once you get through early sobriety, your brain's functioning a lot better and you're able to kind of piece things together properly. And it's not, clarity gives you a lot of, a platform for progress. And I don't know who said this. I don't know if it's an iconic quote or something, but it's very true. Getting sober is way harder in your imagination when you're a drinker than it is in reality. Although getting sober is the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was simple.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It is. And it's like, I feel like sometimes when I talk to people that are right in the thick of it, like their husband's leaving them or they're losing the house or they're losing their job, I feel like when I talk with them, sometimes I have this weird feeling. I'm like, it's so simple, but they're at a crisis point where it seems like they're rejecting the simplicity of it. Like, it can't be that simple, Brad. I'm about to lose everything in my life. If it was that simple, I would have already done it. And I'm like, no, don't complicate it. Don't just keep this thing simple, because you need to not drink for today, for the next hour, for the next 6 hours. That's like literally your goal right now. That's your number one thing. And it won't always be that way. Things get better. But you know what's so interesting too is, one part is leaning into drinking. Changes the chemistry of the brain. We know that information's out there. But when does the point, this is so curious to me, when in our life is the point that we switch from not being interested in drinking, right? When we're 2 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, 10 years old, whatever. I don't know about you, but I didn't wake up thinking about drinking. And if I'm not drinking, wow, so meaningless and life's so miserable. And what's the point? And then this shift seems to happen to where people are like cruising along life, cruising in their life. And then it's like, oh, not drinking. Well, that feels meaningless, or what's going to be the fun in that? Or
Yeah.
that's going to be so boring. It's like this shift almost takes place. And it's really interesting to me, sort of the marketing elements of, the alcohol companies, of everything you see, right? It's like, it's a party. It's a good time. It's celebrations. It's wins. It's like people connecting. And I think that we can believe on a subconscious level because of everything that we've seen. The movie stars, everybody. It's
Mhm.
like, man, if I don't drink, like I'm going to miss out on all of that cool stuff.
Yeah. I read recently that 84, it's just the number sticks in my head, 84% of movies and series created in the last X number of years have drinking scenes in them.
Yeah.
84% of, like over 18 or over 15. It's everywhere, isn't it? It's so ubiquitous, and it's rammed down our throats that it's glamorous, that it's the answer to celebration, stress, relief, blah, 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 blah. That, yeah, I think we get programmed. I mean, look, we get programmed every day with our phones, don't we, about, politics, blah, 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 left, right, whatever. And alcohol's exactly the same. And the only way you really, the only way I think you really see it is if you go to the pits, the depths of despair, and you get out of it. And I have nothing but contempt for alcohol now. Like, I don't see it as like, oh well, go and enjoy it. Do it. I mean, yeah, go and do your thing, whatever. But really, it's gross.
Yeah.
It's gross. How many women would not be sexually assaulted this weekend coming if alcohol wasn't in the world? How many people wouldn't die from car crashes?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a difficult one, and but at least this younger generation aren't drinking like we were, which is something. But
Yeah.
it's not like it was.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, yeah. I mean, it's not, people are not drinking as much as they were, but yeah, it is interesting with all the marketing and everything, that you see in the movies. And yeah, I think that takes a toll. I even shared on an earlier podcast, I ran some numbers and looked into stuff. I mean, even G movies, it was 50% of G movies, kids movies are showing alcohol in a positive light. And I think 75% of PG-13. And I don't think any of it is a coincidence. I don't think that it's just like, hey, and I was curious too, right? Because you see alcohol in movies and you see artists, music artists talking about alcohol. And I was curious in thinking, hey, who's getting paid for this? Are they just doing this? Are they highlighting that brand because they like it? They all make money. Every music, every show, millions and millions of dollars. Gary, anybody out there who's thinking about, embarking on this journey, or maybe they're struggling, I've gotten a lot of messages from people that, they're just really struggling to kind of get some traction going. I mean, what would you mention to them, man?
I would say, number one, get it off your chest immediately, because you can't exist with this overbearing blanket of misery over you alone. And that's why a meeting or opening up, or people, I don't know how many messages I get every day. I'm sure you've got way bigger following than me. How many messages you get? Release the pressure valve, be honest about it, and be open about it. Because if you're open and honest, you allow acceptance, submission, surrender. You give it a chance. I'd make a plan. I'd look at your day and look at when you're vulnerable. Some people only drink between the hours of 5 and 7 p.m. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to tackle those hours? You can't just hope. You have to have structure and make a plan and strategize your way to sobriety. So I'd be open, share, make a plan, and believe you can do it. And when I say make a plan, what are your triggers? Oh, every night I get home and the sunshine bothers me. It's like, okay, well, you need to do something differently other than drink. You have to go for a walk and embrace the sun. You have to, work annoys me. Well, get down to the gym. It's got to distract your attention for the early days and find what works for you. Be adaptable and flexible with your cravings and your trigger management. And basically, your central nervous system's fucked. Work out a way to control it. if you're not meditating and you're trying to get sober, you're missing the biggest trick in the world, in my opinion. Meditation, paying gratitude, these kind of things slow it all down and calm you down. So yeah, for me, it's about sharing and getting a plan. And I think it's not, I say it's not that simple. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
People will be like, what is this dickhead talking about? But, I think it is that simple. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people who made it out in the beginning, it doesn't feel that way. It feels everything but that because of so many times that we didn't achieve our goal or maybe it didn't work out. But I don't overly look at it that way too for people who quit and then they drink again. They're so hard on themselves. It's like beat themselves up. Like we look at any other area of life, right? Like say my goal is to go to the gym 365 days straight. I miss one day. I go only 364. Do you think I'm going to spend much time worrying about the one day? No. But when it comes to drinking, we just rough ourselves up and we don't talk to anybody and everything. It's like, I'm just like, get back in the game. It's all good.
Yeah, exactly. And people think that the sobriety journey starts the day they finally get sober. The sobriety journey starts when you start thinking about it, when you start considering what life might be like, how you'd go about it. That's part of the journey, as is a slip. Like having a slip is an opportunity to analyze and collate data on why you drank. They're helpful and useful. All right, so I didn't have a good replacement drinking that day. I looked in the fridge and there was just 2 beers. Well, A, what are 2 beers doing in your fridge if you're trying to get sober? And B, what are you drinking? Tap water. Why don't you drink like elderflower with a slice and some ice in a beautiful glass so you don't feel like you're missing out? It's like there's always something to learn with a slip, and expect it to be difficult because nothing that gives you goodness in the long run or success or feelings of self-worth, nothing comes easy. So it's okay to expect, people expect it to be like, oh, I'll just magically not drink for the week. Like that Joe Rogan line about it's your own comeback story.
Yeah.
Get involved into it. Believe it's possible. I always say to people, grab your bollocks and fucking go for it, man. It's fun.
Yeah.
Finding this stuff out about yourself, learning how resilient you possibly could be. Because everything in life is easier when you get sober. And all the future dramas and traumas that come your way, what you learn about yourself in sobriety in the early days will stand you in great stead for all those kind of traumas that are coming. So like it's a win-win, but just go for it. Go for it. You're missing out on nothing. You've maxed it out, baby. Like you've been drinking for 30 years. What are you going to get out of it?
Yeah, nothing new is well, I'm only guessing here, educated guess. Nothing new's coming down the line,
I don't think so.
Last question for you, Gary, because you brought up that idea of what people, what you would throw back out there for people and it's tell somebody. For all of those years, what prevented you from sharing with somebody or asking for help?
I don't know. Male pride, maybe. Only child syndrome. Keeping everything to myself all my life, never sharing anything because that's how I grew up. I think I was too proud to admit I was powerless to alcohol. And the second I did that, my world opened up. So, oh God, I wish I'd known back then.
Yeah. I'd say it's 2020, man, I love that because I think that there's probably people that are right there that feel those sort of things and that's sort of in their way. So I just, hopefully that can, when you get past that, opportunities are endless, but I think it's also that our own personal journey of when we're going to make that decision or, really reach out for help. So thank you, Gary, so much, man. So great to
pleasure.
connect.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And thank you for giving me the share back in the day, because it really did give my page a boost and allowed me to reach more people. So well done for all the work you're doing. You've done an amazing thing.
Yeah. Thank you, man. So happy to be part of it, dude.
Cheers. Take care.